Russia situation is in the news a lot, and we're hearing a lot about it. Quite frankly, I don't have a ton of great direct knowledge on the topic. I will point out that the LSTA, which is the loan market kind of association in the United States, is hosting a webcast tomorrow to talk about the topic in detail. So for folks that are members of that, which is probably only US folks, it'd be worthwhile. And I'd imagine the LMA in Europe and other similar organizations are doing similar presentations. But does anyone have kind of direct practical experience working with this in their practice?
I don't. I see that Norton Rose Fulbright has closed their office over there just from reading the journals, but I don't have any personal experience.
I mean, we're not.
Anyone else? Anyone hearing from clients?
Well, Campbell's as a firm, we're not necessarily. We don't have a tremendous amount of direct exposure to that market, but we've had a tremendous amount of queries from clients, understandably, in the last 2 weeks as to what they can and what they cannot do. But the perception in the market seems to be definitely a cooling of relations, irrespective of who your counterparty is, irrespective of whether they're sanctioned or not. And I think that's largely driven by reputational issues and business decisions as to which markets you do and do not want to be in. But people will also, I imagine, be cognizant in the back of their minds, and for us as banking lawyers, knowing that if you exit the SWIFT system, how are funds going to flow? How is that going to affect trades? It's going to have because I'm traditionally come from a maritime background, it's going to have a knock-on effect on the supply of grain. Russia is the world's largest exporter of grain. Ukraine is either the fifth or the sixth, and you've got disruptions in those two markets. You've both on the production side, but also if miraculously people could produce grain in Ukraine, how would it actually get out of there? No ships are able to call. So it's going to have a big disruptive effect upon international trade flows, which will effectively have a knock-on effect on the trade finance market and on the debt market. With the sanctions biting, it's going to be very difficult for people to have trades for longer than 14 days going forward. But as I say, we as a group don't have even if it's a minimal exposure to that market, but it's going to affect people who are based there, regardless of what their views are on the situation and whether they are supportive or oppose what's happening there.
Anyone else have anything that they're hearing from clients or colleagues?
Maybe I'll mention just a few words here. My name is Elshad Rustamov. I used to work at BP for quite a long time at their Turkey office. And I know I'm hearing from former colleagues at BP and other major energy companies that this is a huge deal for them because they still have some ongoing business, which is being rounded up. And we did not necessarily advise on those issues at the moment, but I just know that is currently a big issue for those kind of companies. And even though they have announced, for example, in case of BP, that they're selling out the Rosneft stakes, it looks like a big issue.
Any other, if not on this topic, any other things that you guys are seeing in your jurisdictions or with clients that you wanted to chat about, bring up with the group and share? Leaders?
I'll say just by way of a general, market update, we're seeing here in the U.S., the debt markets continue to be very active. Our practice is really busy. It seems like there's a lot of capital being deployed in the private markets, a lot of lending. I'm seeing a little bit more cross-border work as well. There's a lot of capital fighting for the same opportunities here domestically. And so I think investors are starting to look abroad a little bit, more so than perhaps they used to. That's kind of what I'm saying. Would be interested if anyone's seeing anything differently, or if you're seeing something specific change in your market. It'd be great to hear.
Here in Mauritius, Nashanta speaking, in the region for the last 2 years, the DFIs have been very active, but since the beginning of the year, we can see that the banks are getting more into deals, and that things are going faster than for the last 2 years. And that it is not only DFIs investing and sustaining the economy, I would say.
Charles, what about you over there in China? What's going on with you?
Yeah, first of all, actually, I did not sign up for this meeting until the last minute, because I was traveling and my schedule has been changing. So for the China, I'm thinking about a specific sector, I would say, because in the past like 2 and 3 years, the Chinese government, they have imposed quite a few, I would say, policy and regulatory changes to cool down the real property market. But for various reasons, one of which is to keep up the growth of the local economy. So there seemed to be a trend recently that those restrictions are going to be lifted to some extent, and in some cities, we've already seen this change. And for our work, basically, these relates. One thing is the local, of course, the local debt market. The other is we have seen cross-border investment, the international investment, mainly, well, quite a few of them are those international real estate funds, not just in the Hong Kong or Asia Pacific market. We also see some real estate fund from like Middle East or from North America. So they are looking at those I would say quality assets, not just in those like office buildings, but they are also like looking at like IDC, like logistics. So this is something I would like to share with the team here. Yeah,
I think we're just seeing with the wave of sanctions that the U.S. government is imposing, I think we'll be kept very, very busy by companies, clients around the world, trying to understand them, trying to understand whether it be SWIFT, whether it be trading in Russian debt, looking also at the movement of the U.S. government making towards Venezuela and seeing whether there'll be some liberation in terms of sanctions imposed on Venezuela in recent years. So I think a lot of the work that we've been doing is advising clients and holding hands with clients, trying to understand, because it seems like the sanctions are coming out and new applications of sanctions are coming out seemingly on a daily basis. So it's very much of shifting sands on the sanctions in the area of sanctions. So I think that's keeping us quite busy with clients these days.
Yeah, well, in general, sort of the market's been quite busy for a few months and keeps going busy. I think, especially on the debt market, we've a lot to do with the bond market in Scandinavia, at least in Denmark, probably isn't as active as it was a few months ago. Of course, also we are looking towards sort of the global situation, see how things are developing. I think one of the what remains to be seen is how the banks would act to sort of the new sanctions and sort of, especially with borrowers and groups having activities in Russia, or perhaps even Ukraine, but obviously not for sanctions in Ukraine. But I think that we're still sort of waiting. It's only been 2 weeks and we haven't really seen any, to my knowledge at least, any sort of new development there. But it's obvious that especially banks are looking to see where they should position themselves. Yeah. But other than that, sort of the market remains good. We've seen especially a lot of activity in the in both the leverage and the real estate finance markets, and so I think we still sort of remain optimistic in Denmark, I would say.
Yeah, just an update from Indonesia. I think our debt market is still busy currently. Most investment came from Asia, and most of the target is for the natural resources, energy, and also the current new regime is that the government wish to provide the sub-leniency for investors to invest in the manufacturing of battery or the natural resources related to battery business. And also there has been an increase of derivative markets and crypto trading market in Indonesia. Although currently the financial authority has revoked some licenses for crypto trading that has been doing their business illegally. So I think that's all from Indonesia.
You know what? One thing I'm kind of curious about when Hannah and I were talking about the upcoming meeting. Like when I think about my practice, I'm focused most on the debt markets, borrowing money, secured, unsecured financings. And I know our group is the banking and finance group, which is, a broader kind of area. Although, my sense was always that much of our group was focused on the debt markets as well. I'd be interested to hear from, other people if your practice is lending oriented like mine, or if you have a broader practice and cover other areas. I think it'll be helpful, for discussion purposes, and as we kind of evolve the group over time, we want to kind of tailor it to the practices of people in the group. So, I mean, we don't have a ton of people on the call. We can certainly go around the horn. If you do, I know we've done kind of general introductions before, but would it be helpful for people to, provide a little background, either what you do or what you'd like to see covered on the call? I can.
Are you just asking people generally? I'll start. I mean, this is Tom Perry with Hunt and Andrews Kurth. I'm in Houston. And by the way, we have not seen, at least in our area, a lot of impact from the Russian situation. We remain quite busy, and which is a good thing, mostly with regional stuff. The Texas market's been pretty active lately, but it does not at this point get impacted a lot by Russia. In terms of what we do, Jason, to answer your question, at least the group, David Barber and I, we do lending here. I know David Barber and our firm is a member, but he's traveling today, is big into the securitization field. And so he deals with securitizations a lot, but our practice here is mostly, direct lending oriented, syndicated loans representing agents, banks, and occasionally, as I say, we cross over to the dark side and do borrower work too. But that's it. From our firm is the direct lending and securitization work.
From my perspective, it's mostly direct lending, mostly lender side transactions, but also some capital markets work that we've actually seen that increase over the last 18 to 24 months. Capital markets work has been quite quite buoyant, you know, for us in comparison to our usual base, but I'm much more of a lender's lawyer, and notwithstanding my view in March 2020, I've seen much less enforcement and restructuring work than I thought would be the case, but that's presumably as governments just continue to print money. So I don't see that stopping anytime soon. Hopefully, tempting fate, but hopefully that's the case.
I can say for my part, then it's also primarily direct lending transactions relative, or doing a lot of asset financing, but also leverage transactions and ordinary, you know, unsecured and secured investment grade or direct lending. Given sort of the size of Denmark as jurisdiction, we act both the lenders and the borrowers, and we also in our department also personally do a little debt capital markets, but sort of by far the majority part of our work is on direct lending transactions, syndicate transactions, and club deals, which are quite common in the Nordic markets.
Our firm is a full-scale service firm, and my practice is more or less like most of the team members here. We do direct lending, especially on those cross-border transactions, and also on the acquisition financing transactions. Something I can add is, of course, China still has this kind of we call exchange control. So we do also quite a bit advisory work, those inbound and outbound flow of funds, and also those advisory work for international market players for them to entering the Chinese market. Yeah.
In Mauritius for INS Africa, we deal mostly with direct lending transaction. We are mostly a lenders council advisors, we would say, but this is not exclusive, and sometimes we are on the other side of the table also. And it is lending in respect of projects happening in the region mainly.
Hi, our firm in Indonesia is a full service legal firm. So basically we handle everything. I myself handle mostly direct lending transactions, including aviation financing, mostly foreign loan transaction that I have handled, and also I'm acting for the foreign lenders. Although in some big energy project, we also represented the borrower side. And I also handle capital market and also derivative market transactions.
I'll speak up for I'm a reporter in the Washington office, and Warren Porter is generally a full service firm in the US. Out of the Washington office, we focus a lot on cross-border domestic transactions and cross-border transactions. My own practice heavily involves Latin America, both capital markets, whether debt or equity. It's commonly doing a bond transaction for a Latin American sovereign as doing an equity transaction. As most know in the US, it's the biggest part of the overlay is the securities laws in capital markets. So those are somewhat equally applicable to the debt markets as they are to the equity markets. And also do cross-border lending more typically for the lender, but also for the borrower. And so we do our pan-Latin American practice. We also represent a lot of banks in Latin America. So we advise them on US regulatory issues as well as they come into the US market, establishing branches, exact corporations, things of those nature.
Hi, everyone. It's David Wiseman from Goodman's. We're in Toronto, Canada. Our only office is here in Toronto. In terms of our banking practice. We're pretty much a 50-50 mix of lender and borrower side work. We do, though, do a number of deals that are restructuring related or capital markets related. We have a large corporate group and a large restructuring group. We also do a lot of cross-border, mostly in the US, but we do a lot of deals internationally as well. My particular practice, mostly lender side. There's a few of us that focus on the lender side work, and I'm one of them. We act for banks, ABL lenders, private lenders, hedge funds, that kind of thing. In terms of a quick market update in Canada, just like the US, we've been very busy the last couple of years. Both generally, corporate's been on fire and the debt world has been very busy for us. Our restructuring group has been very quiet though, and they're sort of wondering when things are going to change, but I agree with one of the previous speakers. I don't really see that changing in the near term very much.
Just to compliment that, I was speaking with our restructuring group. They've had a similar experience. Their complaint is that the governments have been flooding so much money into the market that work that otherwise would have been with restructuring groups has been with the lending groups. Since so much money flooded into the market, we've seen that also in our
Yeah. Yeah, Greg, I think that's right. There's just so much capital out there right now, but I think it's going to be really interesting when it does turn, because I think, certainly our group is feeling it'll be fairly dramatic, and it may be for a sustained period of time. Kind of, I think their working theory is the bottom might just fall out when it starts to turn.
I think that's backed up with what you're seeing in the credit default swap market as well. I think the market is expecting the bottom to fall out fairly soon.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly very unique times.
Yes. We can.
Okay, perfect. No, so this is Eduardo from the Dominican Republic, and we've had similar experiences. We basically work mostly lender side for the development mainly of touristic projects, and we've also been in contact by many multilaterals and many international banks that like to participate in these sort of activities. And the fact is that because of the COVID shutdown, there's a lot of capital that it was just not like landed on the past few years. So there's like this hunger of lending money. So we also believe that when will the turning point finally arrive? So that is something we're definitely thinking about when it's going to happen, and a little bit more about our practice here. I also do capital markets. We typically represent the structuring agents and the underwriters for the sovereign bonds locally and internationally. So we have had a little bit of that experience. And as to the borrower side, we typically are in the borrower side with mining projects. So that's a little bit of the difference. And I think I heard someone saying something about restructuring. Although it's here in the DR, there've been a few new laws in the past few years, so we've seen a little bit of an uptick in restructuring participation, but it's been generally quiet in that regard.